Can you maybe walk me through a typical day of your elementary school?
I don't remember it well, but I can tell you that you would wake up early in the morning, and typically you remember that it would be very dark, of course, because during school year, mostly it would be dark, as it would be dark in Anchorage, Alaska, for instance, right? Or Dixon or whatever it is. Um, uh, uh, and first thing, if you were in elementary school and it would be winter, you would in the kitchen there would be bright light, and the grandmother and mother would be just preparing to cooking breakfast, or parents preparing to leave. On the radio, that would there would be like Young Pioneers Dawn, like just which is basically just children's songs, patriotic songs, and just tremendously cheerful, upbeat children's voices and singing and so forth. And that was a very familiar atmosphere, and but you didn't want to go to school because it was cold and dark outside, and because at school there was always, school. It was great to see your friends, but there were lots of unpleasant stuff involved in school, which is to say you stood a strong chance being called to the blackboard to recite a poem, or to called to the blackboard and to solve the homework, like in arithmetics, just to solve this problem or prove something, just and there were lessons which I look forward to, like Russian, for instance, where I had this strange ability to spell everything correctly since very early age, and my teacher was in Russian, was kind of afraid of me and just told me not to even to attend because I corrected her. But there were lots of lessons where you were not looking forward to, and that of course was from very early age and in elementary school. So in winter, you first thing you would be listening to the radio if it's cold outside, because then it would say today temperature. Today, air temperature in Leningrad is 26 below zero Celsius, of course, 26 below zero. And the pupils of elementary school, grade 1 to 4, are advised to stay at home, so there would be no classes. And that's when, and that was quite frequent because winters are cold.
Mm.
And that was like fantastic, because then you just immediately you run out into the street and all your friends are there. just you
You're
just
outside anyway.
yeah, immediately, because it's day off, and then that's what I remember. Then you just stay at home and day is endless, and you look at parents' books, or like or you watch television there. And television, of course, was in its infancy, but there would be something only in the morning. There would be something for children a little bit, but there would be only one channel. And then all your friends lived in the same building, basically,
That's
in
what I
those
was gonna
micro
ask,
districts.
yeah.
Yeah, and even in the same entryway, sort of like just a doorway, and so you would go to a friend who lived like floor below, and you would just study books, that look at books and hang around there. So that would be the day that the kind of day when you wouldn't have to go to school. But when you have to go to school, you go to school, you get dressed warmly. Let's hope it's not, you don't have physical education that day, because that probably would mean that you have to haul to school your skis and ski boots, and it just basically was highly unpleasant.
Every kid had his own ski and
Yeah,
skis and
yeah,
ski boots.
yeah.
Where would you fit it in your little apartment?
Well, yeah. And so, yeah. And but if the day didn't involve phys ed, or if phys ed would take place in the gym, and that I loved, because I was good at sports. We played volleyball, we did track there, we did pull-ups, and I was very good at all of that. But yeah, you come to school, you change your shoes. Obviously, there is a coat check. Old lady who knows everybody by name is just always ornery and very in a bad disposition, but everybody loves her. Lovably ornery old woman. And then yeah, if you didn't have a change of shoes, then you would be in trouble. You probably would be sent back home to get one. You had to carry it in this little bag always, every day, and and then you go up to your classroom. The system was this: the every you were assigned to a certain class from the very beginning, whose composition would not change. It would be the same boys and girls throughout, going from lesson to lesson, but the composition of the class is always the same. And so, depending, first class would be like, for instance, Russian, which, okay, fine, that nobody would bother me there. I could be called Russian language or Russian literature, those two different lessons. I could be called up to the desk, to the blackboard to recite a poem, which I normally didn't mind either, because I had good memory and memorized it all very easily. Then there might be arithmetic, which I liked a little less because, again, you could be. So mainly what I remember is just sitting in this large room in the yellow light, intensely yellow. It's very dark outside. Windows are covered with snow and ice. On the walls the walls are painted green, and it's generally very austere, but somehow strangely kind of cozy as well, mainly because of the contrast between the yellow light and the darkness outside. It's warm. The teacher is just sitting there with her ledger and just, so who's going to go to the blackboard now? Let's see. And she goes like this, up and down, and everybody's like this. trying, like looking like this. So who's going to go to the blackboard? Who haven't we heard from in a while? So
Did you sit in the front or in the back, or
where we would be assigned, but mainly in the back, where you usually the front was reserved for like typically girls who were like excellent students and always raised their hands, just basically, they loved the process of learning, and and teachers loved them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was not one of those, even though I was one of the best students. But I certainly didn't appreciate being like constantly called on or sitting in front like an idiot, and so, yeah, you sit there are two people at the desk. You sit with your friend, hopefully, and then you can just exchange notes and then the teacher, but if you decide to exchange notes flying all around the class, basically, all kinds of amorous notes or like notes that have absolutely nothing to do with learning. And so periodically teacher would just go down and there would be different teachers for different lessons, of course, but there would be a homeroom teacher who would be generally in charge of your class. In our case, it was a history teacher. And yeah, so that would be the day in elementary school. You would have maybe 4 lessons in elementary school, so you'd be kind of free by 1 o'clock, and you would have in middle school and grade and high school, you probably would be not free until 3 o'clock. Say, so there would be 6 hours. Yeah, at some point at 12 o'clock. No, at 11:30, I think you would go to cafeteria and you would have breakfast there or lunch. I remember it cost nothing, like 6 to 16 kopecks, which does not translate into anything. It just basically, it's just. But I remember those. I remember those breakfasts and lunches as well. They were not fantastic.
What would they serve you?
Well, they would serve maybe. Pirozhok, which is like, this kind of like a ravioli thing, or, pierogi thing.
Pierogi, yeah.
Yeah, but those are small ones with something. And then would be like a muffin, but just muffin with nothing. Just, not a muffin, just dough, like muffin-like thing. Right, there would be a slice of there may be a slice of half hard-boiled egg or a piece of sausage, small piece of cheese, maybe milk, and kisel, which is basically like cranberry kind of based, sort of like mousse kind of thing, which is very popular in Russia and so forth. So yeah, that kind of thing. I think nothing nothing really to remember too fondly. And yeah, and then you would go back, and the day would be, and the teacher. So you remember how you just sit there, and all these portraits of great Russian writers, typically, and of course Lenin. Lenin was everywhere, but the portraits of and Marx would be everywhere, and Friedrich Engels, who most Americans and Canadians don't know who he was, but it was all, they were often portrayed together: Marx, Engels, and Lenin. Lenin is the one who, Engels was Karl Marx's sidekick, but also the rich guy who actually gave money to Marx to live off. So, and Lenin, of course, was the one who developed Marxism to the point of Leninism, Marxism, Leninism, it was called. So, and also great Russian writers there. There is Chekhov, there is Pushkin, there is Tolstoy, um, Belinsky, the literary critic, all 19th century, and there they are. They all just stare, goggle. They're all staring at you, and you're just sitting there, and the teacher is droning on and on about something, especially if it's like, and your mind is completely not there, and it's dark outside, and it's bright yellow kind of cube of light. There are 40 typically pupils in class. In back of you, somebody is just whispering something. People are just throwing like little balls of paper, notes,
Right.
flying paper planes. If the teacher is not paying attention, there are notes between boys and girls going like in large numbers back and forth, just, and the teacher's droning something, and you would just that's my life, and you think that's that's my life. And the lesson is 45 minutes, but it's endless. When you're little, it's an end. Right now I could just sit for 45 minutes like this, stare at
I think we have already.
yeah, but I could just it's nothing, right? I could just 45 minutes is what takes me to just peruse like Russian news website briefly, just a waste of time essentially. But when you just and there is a clock on the wall, and you watch the minute, and just
If you got out at 1 o'clock, was that your like 1 hour of daylight left you on the
well,
way home?
if it's December, then it starts. Yeah, there is between 12 and 2, I would say, when there is it's legitimately light. But after that, it starts getting dark, and prior to that, it also is kind of darkish. But in the morning and after, and in the and late afternoon already, it's very, very dark. But you're used to that, and there is a certain coziness and comfort in that also.